So with the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, I have reviewed it. I have reviewed every Spider-Man movie, so now it is time to rank all of them and see which is the worst one and which one is the best one. Let's get right into it. There are 9 Spider-Man movies, I believe, so let's start right at number 9, the worst of the worst, and I went back and forth on which one was the worst because there's 2 Spider-Man movies that I really hate. So I had to think long and hard about this, and I think number 9 should go to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, keep in mind, I thought long and hard on what is the worst Spider-Man movie because I hate 2 Spider-Man movies, and this is one of them, and I had to put it here. I just had to put it here. It's not a good film, guys. I just don't like this movie. And what sucks is that there's so much emotional weight to this movie because I love Peter and Gwen. Their relationship is so well done. It's even better in this movie than in The Amazing Spider-Man. Their chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield is still the best of any Spider-Man movie, including No Way Home. The death of Gwen Stacy is done so well in this movie. I mean, it's just like the comics, only, done in their own way. So well done, so emotional. The problem is the ending completely ruins that really heartbreaking scene when he's like all better at the end. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna come down there and beat you, Rhino. It just ruins what was supposed to be a really somber ending. That's the thing about this movie. They introduce so many plot points. There's just so many plot points mushed into this one movie. And it's like this film just couldn't figure out which one they wanted to conclude first before going on to the next film. I mean, you had Electro's storyline about how he's best friends with Spider-Man, and he becomes Electro. Then you also have Peter and Gwen's relationship. Then you have Harry randomly showing up, and he has the goblin blood in him. He's like, oh, I'm gonna die, so I kind of need to figure this out. And then he becomes Green Goblin. It's too much going on. And that's what really hurts this movie. It's just a cluster of ridiculous storylines, and none of them really reach a satisfying conclusion. I mean, you casted Paul Giamatti as Rhino. Why? Rhino is a difficult character to bring into the live-action sense, but you could have done so much better than this. No disrespect to Paul Giamatti, he's an amazing actor, but no, he is not meant to be Rhino. I feel really bad for putting this movie at number 9, but it deserves it. It's just not a good movie. Even though the action sequences are fun, the swinging is still the best of any Spider-Man film. Andrew Garfield's performance is really good, but it's just too much into one movie, and it doesn't really make it enjoyable. So Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets number 9. Coming in just above it at number 8 is Spider-Man 3. I hate this movie. This movie is starting to get a cult following for some reason. I don't know why. This is just not a good film. The amount of storylines that were ruined in Spider-Man 3 were honestly impressive. Now, let me just say this. I do love the symbiote suit. The reason why I have it above Spider-Man 2 is even I'm starting to think, why do I have this above Amazing Spider-Man 2? No, look, I love the look of the symbiote suit. The score that Raimi puts in this movie is so well done. I love it. I love the Raimi trilogy score, and that's what really helps. And it's interesting to see Peter turn into something that he's not. I like that. And I do like the action scenes in this movie. The fight scenes are very well done. I really like the fight in the Osborn mansion between Harry and Peter. That was also very well done. You don't get to see a lot of hand-to-hand combat with Spider-Man films, so that was a really nice change of pace. Sandman is very well done in this movie. His CGI was honestly really impressive. It still kind of holds up to today's standards. That's nice. Everything else about this movie is just so poorly done. Mary Jane is unbearable in this movie. How she's so jealous of Peter's success, which makes no sense to me. Harry becoming the Goblin, doing the whole ooh strawberry thing. That's just what were they thinking? And look, at the end of Spider-Man 2, it clearly was setting up to be Harry versus Peter, but instead they have a beginning of the movie fight. He loses his memory and he's all overly friendly. Then he gets his memory back and now he's all bad again, and then he burns half his face, and then his butler conveniently says, your father killed himself with a glider, right? And he's like, oh man, me and Peter are besties again. And then they fight and then he dies. And I haven't even started with Topher Grace's Venom. What a poor casting choice. Look, Topher Grace is a good actor. I've seen him do other things. He's not a terrible actor. He's not meant to be Eddie Brock. The way they wrote him just didn't work. Him not saying "we" the entire time, it just didn't work for me. And the CG of him, when he was showing his face, didn't work. The lines they gave Venom of, I like being bad, and, ooh, my spider sense is tingling, if you know what I mean. No, it didn't work. And I'm still sad that this is still the final solo film of Tobey Maguire that does really make me sad, because it was such a sad way to end the film. too many storylines, very disappointing, and yes, the whole, like, you know, the dancing thing like that, and then the jazz going, now take on this. Yeah, no. I do not like this film, but it is slightly better than Amazing Spider-Man 2 because it just gets into that so bad it's good territory. Okay, so from here on up, these are movies that I actually really like, and I have no problem watching again. Spider-Man's actually one of the more consistent franchises in Hollywood history, and I give credit to that. So coming in at number 7 now is The Amazing Spider-Man. I feel really bad that Andrew Garfield's films are down here so low, but before I criticize the movie, let me talk about the things I like. It's actually a decent origin film. It's good for, you know, modern audiences. It's not terrible. I really love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. He is still the most comic accurate Spider-Man character in terms of constantly one-liners, like before the fight, during the fight, after the fight, just constant trash talk. That's what Peter does throughout the comic books, and I really love that. Again, the relationship between Peter and Gwen Stacy is so well done. Still the best relationship out of any of the relationships in the live-action films, and I'm going to stand by that. Where this movie starts to tail off for me is, the writing is not great. There's a lot of cringy dialogue that's in this movie, and I really don't like how most of the action sequences are in the dark. Why? Spider-Man is such a vibrant character. He fights during the day most of the time. Spider-Man's such a colorful character. Why not have him during the day? But this whole movie just takes such a dark tone. And literally, it takes place in, like, the Dark City. Like, I don't know why Spider-Man is only out at night. Like, he's not Batman. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why Mark Webb decided to take that direction, but it just didn't work for this film. The thing that bothered me the most was Lizard was done pretty well in terms of his creation. He looked cool. But the fact that Peter just has such, like, regret about him, he's like, oh, you know, I'm the reason. It's like, I didn't feel that emotional punch because they didn't explore the relationship between Peter and Connors enough. If you look at the comics and animated shows, their relationship is so well done. I love their relationship because when he does turn into the Lizard, you feel that emotional punch that Peter is truly responsible, and you feel his regret and guilt. You don't really feel that here because Peter's not really friends with Connors. They just happen to be working together. The only reason Peter's there is because he wants to find out about what's going on with his parents. Are they spies? How'd they die? All that stuff. So you don't really get a true friendship between them. That's why you don't really get that emotional punch when Peter starts to get all emotional. So unfortunately for Amazing Spider-Man, it's a decent enough origin, but it's not the 2002 origin movie, because that origin movie was so well done. More on that later, but Amazing Spider-Man just had way too big shoes to fill, and it just couldn't hit the mark. Coming up next is Spider-Man Homecoming, Tom Holland's first solo film. This was his first film after Civil War came out, and people loved his performance in Civil War. I loved it. I was like, man, this is just what Spider-Man needed. And, you know, what's so great about Tom Holland, he brings, like, this great positive energy to the character that was very much needed. And I love his performance in this movie. It's not his best performance, more on that later, but this is a great performance by him. Vulture is awesome in Spider-Man Homecoming. Talk about taking such a goofy character in the original, you know, Stan Lee comics and making him more sinister. You know, Vulture in some comics is more sinister, and I like that they found that happy balance of keeping him a little bit campy, but also finding him a little bit more modern and sinister. A great balance, and Michael Keaton was so great in this movie, and I loved every second he was on screen. Now, what I don't like about Spider-Man Homecoming, and it's the most prevalent in this movie out of the 3 Tom Holland films, the over-reliance of Tony Stark. Like, Tony Stark is in this movie way too much. Look, I'm an old-school Spider-Man fan, so I prefer to see him as an individual hero, where he's just doing his own resources, using his own resources and knowledge to figure out stuff. But instead, I just don't like how he's trying so hard to get Tony Stark's attention. That very much bothers me. And, you know, that scene where he's straight up getting a talking to on the bridge, you know, by Tony Stark. Again, that's just not for me. I don't want my Spider-Man being verbally abused in the middle of the day. It's just not for me. I will always prefer Spider-Man to be an individual hero. So the over-reliance of Tony Stark having to save Spider-Man in almost every situation, it just didn't work for me. But it was a great start for MCU Spider-Man. Now, coming in at number 5 is Spider-Man Far From Home, the second film of the Tom Holland original trilogy. Talk about taking things that worked in Homecoming and making it even better. This is such a great film. This is way better than Homecoming. I love Homecoming. But Far From Home just is on another level because, again, this is after Endgame. So Tony Stark is no longer alive, rest in peace. but Tom Holland is finally by himself. He still has help from Happy. You know, there still is an over-reliance on Stark technology, but I like that he's by himself and he has to truly figure out who he is as a hero. And it works because Mysterio is such a great villain in this movie to bounce off of. Jake Gyllenhaal was so awesome as Mysterio. I mean, Mysterio is already one of my favorite Spider-Man villains of all time. He's such an interesting character, and I was so curious to see how they were going to use his illusions, and they used it in such a great way. I'm still surprised how they were able to use this, because not only were they using it to trick Spider-Man, but it was also telling a story. It was using Peter's insecurities and using those illusions against him for it, and that's what's so good about this movie. It uses those illusions as also great storytelling. And again, Mysterio is such a great character in this. It's just a very enjoyable film. Nick Fury is really funny in this movie, and I always thought watching this film, I was like, why is he so different? And of course it was revealed that he was a Skrull, so he was the Nick Fury that we all know and love. But again, Nick Fury was hilarious in this movie. Ned was funny. I like the start of MJ and Peter's relationship. That was very well done. I love Zendaya and Tom Holland together. They have such great chemistry, and that's why Spider-Man Far From Home is better than Spider-Man Homecoming. Coming in at number 4, this might be a little controversial, but it is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now again, there is nothing wrong with this movie. This is a perfect Spider-Man film. The animation, the writing, the music, everything about this movie I love so much. I love Miles Morales as a character. He has quickly become one of the most popular superheroes in not just Marvel, but of all of superheroes. Like, he really is that amazing, pun intended. I love Miles Morales in this movie. He's such a relatable character. You know, taking an origin story of Peter or Miles that's been told so many times and still making it so interesting, I love it. I love how they keep telling Peter's story over and over again, like, all right, let's try this one more time, and telling everybody's origin story in such a fast-paced yet such a knowledgeable and fun way. That's something you don't really see in a Spider-Man movie. And that's what it helps where it's an animation film, because that's where you truly get to make Spider-Man action sequences how they're supposed to be in the comics and animated movies. As great as technology has come in terms of CGI, animation's just on another level. And Into the Spider-Verse is such a very well done film. I can't wait for Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Into the Spider-Verse, there's nothing wrong with this movie, but the movies above it, I personally just like a little bit more. Here we go, guys. Top 3. Starting at number 3 is the original Spider-Man in 2002. This is my childhood. I grew up with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. This was my first exposure to Spider-Man as a character. You know, it was this and the 90s animated Spider-Man. Those two were all I knew about Spider-Man back in the day. I love this movie, so much nostalgia. It still holds up in terms of storytelling. Tobey Maguire is still the best Peter Parker. Out of any of the live-action films, any of the movies, he is still the best Peter Parker, and I loved him in this movie. Just that energy that he brings and also that innocence that he brings to Peter Parker is so well done. Such a great origin story of how Uncle Ben dies, using that as revenge, and then he becomes a superhero. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is still one of the best casting choices in superhero history. The only thing that doesn't work in this movie for me is Green Goblin's outfit. I know some people like it, that's fine. What really sucks is that if you look at the original test screenings for Spider-Man, they had a different look for Green Goblin. It was awesome. It was horrifying. And, you know, Sony said, hey, we're not using this design because kids are going to find this really terrifying. Even though they had a bomb explode right in Spider-Man's face and there's blood everywhere. So I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah, that look just didn't work for me because Willem Dafoe has such an expressive face. Why would you not use that to your advantage? Instead, that ridiculous, like, fake Power Ranger villain outfit kind of covers everything that makes Willem Dafoe so amazing. He had to rely mostly on his voice to make Green Goblin come across as sinister. Luckily, they have Willem Dafoe, who's one of the best actors ever, and he can make it work, and he did. That's why Green Goblin became one of the most memorable superhero villains of all time. So Spider-Man 2002 makes my top 3. All right, here we go. Two left. In my opinion, this is where it separates Spider-Man fans. Are you more of a world-bending, Spider-Verse, end-of-the-world type of Spider-Man fan, or are you more of a grounded Spider-Man story, where it's more about Peter Parker and his troubles as trying to be an adult in the world? Which two? And don't get me wrong, I love both of these movies. The fact that No Way Home is already up here just shows how historic this movie is. But I really had to sit on it, and I think at number 2, I'm going to put Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie was everything I wanted. This is one of the best theater experiences I ever had for me personally. Now, in terms of a crowd, Endgame was still the best, but in terms of my personal, like, emotional experience, this is by far the best experience I ever had in a movie theater. I love this movie so much. Now, again, I'm not going to spoil it. I do have a spoiler review in my review, but I'm not going to spoil anything. But the risks they take, the storylines they do, introduction of the villains from past movies, Willem Dafoe knocks it out of the park. It was just so well done. It proves that you can have multiple villains in a movie and make it work. Jamie Foxx's Electro is so much better in this than Amazing Spider-Man 2. Dr. Octopus, Alfred Molina, was so well done. I still like him better in Spider-Man 2, but he was great in this movie. Willem Dafoe, he's better in this movie than in the original Spider-Man. That's really saying something, because they understood that you had to, you know, get rid of that ridiculous mask and let him express the duality of Norman Osborn and Green Goblin. They used that in this movie. Awesome. Sandman's cool. Tom Holland gives his best performance as Spider-Man yet. And the fact that we're going to get another trilogy, there's so many storylines that they can, you know, explore. And I can't wait. But for Spider-Man No Way Home, it hits my number 2. But of course, guys, number 1 is still Spider-Man 2. The reason why is simply because the storytelling they use for Peter Parker. You know, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm an old school Spider-Man fan. I love it when Peter is just this broke kid trying to deal with normal problems like rent, and also trying to be a superhero while also trying to be with the girl he loves, and also balance his friendships and jobs. That's what Spider-Man is. That's what made him so relatable to us and to me growing up. And I still love this movie. It just has a special place in my heart. The action sequences are so awesome. Alfred Molina in this movie is amazing as Dr. Octopus. Still one of the best casting choices ever. J. Jonah Jameson is awesome by J.K. Simmons. I love JJ in this movie. And of course, Peter Parker dealing with this existential crisis of should he be the hero and sacrifice what he wants, or should he finally be selfish for once and be Peter Parker and have the normal life that he is so craved? It's such a great duality and such a great... It's just awesome what they've done here. The fact that they were able to balance Peter's worlds, and it made such an incredible film, and it all was due to Tobey Maguire's fantastic performance. This is still his best performance as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. This is a timeless classic, and this will still probably be the number 1 Spider-Man movie. But again, we'll see what happens. I mean, Across the Spider-Verse is coming, and of course, Tom Holland is getting 3 new movies. But for now and always, unless they prove me wrong, Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie. And there we have it, guys. We have ranked all Spider-Man films. This has been such a journey of reviewing all the Spider-Man movies, getting all the way to No Way Home, and that amazing experience. But I've ranked it. Spider-Man 2 is still the best Spider-Man movie of all time. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.